Just one game into the 2017 NFL season, and we have some major injuries to some prime-time players. Hello, I'm Bill Enright from FFChamps.com, and I'm with Jared Smola and Jason Phelps. They are from SportsInjuryPredictor.com. Fellas, before we start talking about David Johnson and Allen Robinson, let's tell our viewers what the Sports Injury Predictor actually is.
Yeah, so SportsInjuryPredictor.com is a site devoted to being a reference tool for anyone interested in NFL injuries. We've collected injury histories from public available records for over 600 past and present NFL players. Combining this injury data with some career and projected player usage, some playing condition characteristics, we've built models to project the chance of injury in the coming season and to predict the number of games missed for any given player. So we've actually just published a couple articles describing our data, describing our model, and actually evaluating our model against some benchmarks. So if you're interested in more details like that, certainly encouraged to go visit our website.
Pretty in-depth, pretty data-driven, pretty scientific. I love it. It's going to help a lot of people with fantasy football that don't use Sports Injury Predictor already. Let's start it off, guys. David Johnson, the consensus number one running back for the 2017 season, probably the top overall pick in every draft that you were in. We do know the x-rays came back negative, but what do you guys have in terms of your data for these type of injuries? Do we have a best case scenario, a worst case scenario?
Yeah, so as you said, it seems like they're reporting that the x-rays came back negative, which means no fracture, right? I've heard, I'm not a medical expert, but I've heard that fractures can be hidden when there's initial swelling and things like that. So maybe the MRI could reveal that it is actually fractured. So worst case scenario is that it is fractured, right? But so just in general, let's say we're completely in the dark about whether it's fractured, sprained, bruised. Here's a distribution of any wrist-related injury.
Okay.
Right. So most players are missing, less than one game. So David Johnson missed maybe a quarter so far, right, with that injury. We actually track missed time to the quarter, not just whether a player is active or not. So we're docking him for the quarter he missed this past Sunday.
Okay.
Some of these players are missing as many as 9, 12, 16 games. So it's going to be more enlightening probably to look at it by condition, right? So let's exclude fracture for now because we're assuming that it's not broken. All right, so we're focusing on players that sustained this injury September, October, November. Okay. So we'll isolate there. We have, looks like 9 total records in our database. That's of somebody that either bruised or sprained their wrist. There's a 0% chance that they went to IR. That's good.
Okay, that's great.
1 out of those 9 actually had to have surgery. Okay, so that's still on the table. But you can see most of the players miss 0 or less than 1 game. So there's good historical evidence to support that David Johnson could return next week. Only one person missed more than 1 game, or more than 1+ games, right? So there's still a chance. So 2 out of those 9 missed the following week, right? But everybody save 1 was back by the week following the next.
Jared, let me go over to you. What do you think the fantasy impact is in terms of handcuffs, in terms of replacements? If you're on the waiver wire and you have David Johnson, what do you think you should be doing this week?
Yeah, so no one in Arizona's backfield is going to assume the David Johnson role. No one's going to be getting 20, 25 touches per game. So I think for starters, you're going to see maybe some more targets go to the wide receiver. So it might help Larry Fitzgerald, might help John Brown a little bit. But in the backfield, I think you're looking at a committee between Kerwin Williams and Andre Ellington. After Johnson exited on Sunday, you had Kerwin Williams picking up 3 carries and seeing 1 target. Andre Ellington saw 3 targets. So I think you might see that type of workload split where Williams is handling most of the carries, but then Andre Ellington is doing most of the passing game work. So I think they're both probably worth adding. Ellington probably makes more sense in PPR leagues. Williams should be added in both PPR and non-PPR.
Allen Robinson. This one's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow, only because unlike David Johnson, we already know Robinson, he's out for the year, all right? Tore his ACL. The Jaguars passing attack, say what you will, but he was their number one wide receiver this year. What was his injury score? I know you guys do injury scores or the probability for injury before the season starts. What was Robinson's injury score?
So Robinson was actually on the lower end of the high volume wide receivers because we have found that volume, whether it be touches for a running back or targets, catches for a wide receiver, that does impact probability of injury. So Robinson was kind of on the low end for the wide receiver one types. We had him as a 29% chance of injury in 2017. He actually entered this season with a fairly clean injury history. He had the fractured foot as a rookie back in 2014 that cost him 6 games, but he had played all 16 games in each of the past 2 seasons and only appeared on the injury report with a minor thigh bruise that didn't cost him any time.
We know he's done for the year, but given the timing of the injury, we should expect him for next year opening week, right?
Yeah, if we look at all the comparables, like recent comparables for ACL injuries, guys that missed or tore their ACL at the beginning of the season or in the preseason, they were all ready to go, even by training camp of the following season, right? So, think of guys like Kelvin Benjamin, Jordy Nelson. These guys were all good to go the following season, so not much concern at this point. Obviously, he's lost for the year, but next year should be fine.
Andrew Luck, we haven't seen him in action from training camp, preseason, was inactive in week 1. The whispers are that he might not be ready until October. What kind of data do we have about the Colts quarterback and his shoulder injury?
Yeah, so we found 2 historical comps to Cutler. Or sorry, not Cutler. To Andrew Luck. Jay Cutler and Drew Brees, right? So Jay Cutler had essentially the same issue last year.
Cutler had his surgery in early December, and he was ready for this preseason as soon as he signed with Miami. So he's obviously was at least a month ahead of where Luck is at this point.
That's a really good point, Jared, because a lot of people are wondering why it's taking so long for Andrew Luck, and the Colts have been pretty hush about the details, but it's definitely concerning because if you watch them play against the Rams, they looked awful. Scott Tolzien was brutal. They brought in Jacoby Brissett, who they just traded for a few days before the actual game from the Patriots, but T.Y. Hilton was bad, Dante Moncrief was bad, Frank Gore was bad. None of these guys can be trusted until Andrew Luck's back on the field.
Yeah, I think this is basically a stay-away offense until Luck is back. I mean, even Frank Gore struggled finding any room on the ground. On top of Andrew Luck, they're also missing their center, Ryan Kelly. So this offense is just a mess right now. I don't know if you caught Jason Lockenfor's report on Sunday morning. He said Luck is still, quote, several weeks away from his 2017 debut. So I'm at this point expecting week 4, week 5 at the earliest, before we see Luck back on the field.
All right, so guys, one last question here, and I want to talk about, so David Johnson went down with the injury, right? So he was probably the biggest name in terms of running backs. You have 2 of the biggest names, maybe 2 of the top 5, for highest probability of injury. Why should fantasy owners be worried about LaShawn McCoy and Ezekiel Elliott?
Yeah, so again, we found that projected workload or actual volume correlates pretty highly with injury probability. And of course, that sort of makes it a catch-22 for fantasy owners because we want that volume. We need that volume, especially from our running backs. But at the same time, it makes these guys a higher risk of injury because, more touches a guy gets, the more hits he takes, and the more hits you take, greater chance of injury. So that's the biggest thing making McCoy and Zeke Elliott high injury risks. The other thing for McCoy, I mean, he's getting up there in age. He has a lengthy injury history. He has a sprained ankle, a dislocated thumb, multiple hamstring issues, a torn MCL, and a sprained shoulder, and that's just in the last 2 seasons now. So he's sort of been dealing with stuff. He's missed some time. I'd be surprised if he makes it through all 16 games this season. Elliott has a cleaner injury history than LaShawn McCoy, but he did have a hamstring injury last August, and we found that those things tend to pop back up again later on down the road.
All right, fellas, great stuff as always. Hopefully next week, coming out of week 2, we won't have that many injuries to report on. But you guys do an excellent job. SportsInjuryPredictor.com. Check it out. If you want your fantasy football players to stay healthy, you have to avoid that these guys, some of these guys with these high probabilities. Really awesome stuff. Great tool, and people should definitely check it out. SportsInjuryPredictor.com.